Welcome back to the first FPL stream of the season, and it won't be for a deadline or reaction, but the game has launched. It was a couple of hours ago actually, and I'm now available, free, to talk all things Fantasy Premier League after extensive coverage of World Cup Fantasy, and yeah, just tick off all the boxes. The Club World Cup last summer, the previous two Euro tournaments, even the World Cup in Qatar, and obviously UCL Fantasy every single year, well, since 2020 really. And the same goes for Fantasy Premier League as well. So I'll delve into some questions and comments and try my very best to push my voice to the limit. I'm not even sure what's happening in the last couple of months, but it seems like every single time I've got to push myself through some bullshit one way or the other. But good to see everyone here, and also some familiar faces in the chat, from members to moderators and also regular viewers. Let's start off with Trenix, who says, "Yo, what's good, Dylan?" Yeah, pretty decent, all things considered. What about you? McBurney could be a cheeky little differential in the opening three game weeks. I'll be honest, I don't see myself going for him, but maybe in one of my drafts he'll find his way in there. But in terms of my final team, I'd be very surprised if that's the case. Easy says, "Hello Dylan, new season, new chaos incoming." Well, I will be on holiday fairly soon, but the plan is to record some content, at least the main pieces, particularly drafts, which people are always interested in. So that will be the sort of focus in general for my preseason content. And if you want to see any others, I usually do best goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, forwards, budget picks, premiums, and stuff like that. Then that could be something worth looking at. But yeah, I think drafts will take precedence in general. Welcome, Barath. Yes, we are back. The first thing I see are 4.5 million forwards and 4 million defenders. So just to be completely transparent, I've only seen Haaland's price, Bruno Fernandes, and Gabriel. I don't know anybody else's price really. So I went on fpl.team over the last couple of days. I was going to do like an early draft video before the game released. And yeah, ultimately, with most players, I literally don't know their prices. So I'll be reacting to it live and offering my thoughts about who could offer great value. I think I've seen that Krippy Jr. 7.5 million and Gibbs Wise 8, but with the rest, I couldn't tell you. Easy says, "This is my current setup draft. Lamens, Alex Palmers, O'Reilly, Mukiele, Coyote, Goodmanson, Van Dijk, Bruno, Ismail Assar, Gakpo and Dye, Odegaard, Haaland, Calvert-Lewin and Welbeck." I think the ones that stand out as potential sells or just not worth including is Odegaard and Gakpo. I think with the rest, there is certainly a debate. Bruno Fernandes and Haaland will be very popular despite their expensive price tags, and having both of them will take up a significant portion of your budget. Over a quarter of it would be spent on two players, but they were the best two from last season. Barath also says Kinski is good. Yeah, I need to check his price. 4.5 million, maybe he's something like that. I'm going to check very soon, and that's what the stream is going to provide you. Haaland and Bruno alone cost 27.5 million. No way I buy Gabriel now with 8 million. Yeah, he is very expensive, Gabriel. I've seen that price. But yeah, I think from the free, Gabriel is the sacrifice. You can always cover Arsenal with Mosquera while Saliba's out injured. Maybe Konsa if he moves to Arsenal at 4.5. That'd be pretty good. If he's priced at that, I'm going to have to double check. David Raya would also be significantly cheaper than Gabriel, I imagine. So that's where we're going to find different ways of covering the best teams defensively and across all positions as well. Welcome, FPL Kevy. Let's go. Hello, mate. Welcome back to another season. Yes, I probably need a little bit of a break in general, to be honest, from content creation and football, which can be very taxing. But yeah, I'm here with another stream, and the plan is to once again give you everything you need to know for the match day, well, in this case, Game Week 1 deadline. For UCL Fantasy, it will be match day 1 in early September, but you know the drill by now. Team selections, deadline streams, best wildcard squads, they will be there every single game week. Welcome as well to Genius Gamer. You're the only last remaining creator not yet reacting to FPL Launch until now. I wasn't aware. I haven't been checking what the others are doing, nor could I care less, to be honest. But yeah, I'm here. And ultimately, I wanted to do an early draft over the last couple of days, but yeah, there's always some BS happening, like I said, so it is what it is. How ridiculous is it to go without Haaland or without Bruno Fernandes? I think going without one of them is fine. If you go without both, you need to get your pick spot on. That's where things could border on ridiculous per se. But if you've got Haaland and not Bruno, that's fine. The same goes for the other way around, but you need to make sure that replacement and also the way you use that budget is, well, utilized very smartly. Live rank during matches, go. It's like, wait, what? Letting a cyclist do a long lead in front in a long race before you catch the front leader in the last kilometer. I'm not so sure about that one. the plan is to pretty much get off to a great start and not have to do any catching up, but there's always going to be that dynamic in mini leagues and rankings as well. Feels like I only saw you last week. Well, because that's the case. I've still been very active on YouTube with World Cup fantasy content, best wildcard squads every week, deadline streams, team selections, and you know, even in the build up to that tournament, I still got quite a lot of content, but not as much as I want to do for one reason or the other. The intro longer than FPL new update launch. It's pretty much the same thing. I let the music play out. I've got everything set. It's better than just rushing into it and having things half-assed. Bench boost game week 1. People always ask this question, and it's definitely a debate to get rid of it early. You've got another one for the second half of the season, but based on the fixtures, I think it's going to be quite clear, just like in the last campaign, that we're going to have a very template second half of the season strategy for all the chips. And it's going to be the exact same, by the way, for those that are unaware. The wildcard, bench boost, triple captain, and free hit. We have all of them for the first half of the season, and then the second set from game week 20 to 38. But I think that's where, as we approach the end of the campaign, that's where we're going to go towards pretty much the same sequence. Hopefully we can see a bit of variety, and I think we'll see that in the first half of the season, but not as we get to the business end of the Premier League season. I think Mosquera will be a startup as things stand. I think Arsenal could still go into the transfer market and get Konsa, who is heavily linked. That would be a very interesting one from an FPL perspective and offering great value into arguably the best defence. We'll see how Arsenal play this season, but they certainly were last season. Fair enough, easy. I just thought you did a spelling error. Yeah, 4 million defender would be very important. I mean, you can't feasibly have premiums like Gabriel or Van Dijk alongside Bruno and Haaland, and then also having a very balanced midfield. You're going to have some sacrifices. I've seen people talk about Buendia and stuff like that in the community, so we'll be delving into that very soon. Dylan is guessing all prices correctly. So just to be clear, I already knew Gabriel, Gibbs-White, Krupi Jr., Haaland, and Bruno Fernandes, but for example, Kinski, my guess would be 4.5. I haven't seen it. I have no reason to lie, and it's not going to get me anything from it. It would be better if I knew all the prices now and just tell you, yeah, buy this player, buy that. But I wanted it to be a bit more authentic and also reactionary, because with FPL, I've switched off for the past couple of months, really, focusing on the World Cup. And now I'm back and we'll see what happens. So let's do that for a little bit, go through the prices. And by the way, what you see here is not like a team I thought out. I literally put auto pick and let things stand. So let's see what these players are actually priced at. Let's go to the transfer section here and go to the list. So Steele. Okay, that's a bit different. I think before you could see the prices on here. Okay, that's strange. I'm going to have to go for them one by one. Yeah, 4 million. Allison is 5.5. Bit too injury prone for my liking. Okay, Lacroix, who's pretty good for DEFCON. 6 million. Yeah, the prices are going to be more expensive this year. Branthwaite is 5.5. I'd rather go for an Everton defender. Tarkovsky 6 million though as well. I've just seen on the left-hand side of the screen. Van Dijk is 6.5. I saw those predictions from fpl.team when I was playing around with a few drafts over the past couple of days, so they got that prediction spot on. Truffers 5.5 million. Nico Riley 6.5. You see Mark Gay 6 million. Kusanov 5.5. Mateus Nunes is 6 million. I think FPL.team predicted him at 5.5. Marcus Senesi, 6 million. He was brilliant last season, but do I want to spend 6 million on a Tottenham defender? No. And Senesi was actually part of my first draft plan, so I might need to check that out. Morgan Rogers, not overpriced in FPL, even though he is in real life. 7.5. I think that's not too shabby. Krupi Jr., yeah, 7.5. Florian Wirtz, same price. I remember last season I was saying that he's, well, that it's just a really good bargain. The price he was at last season, 8.5, and that just didn't turn out to be the case. Rayan Cherky, 7.5. Bruno Guimaraes, 7. I think that's still a fairly decent one there for him. Kai Havertz is 7.5, so no changes there. Watkins, 8 million. Isak has obviously gone down to 9 million. But yeah, the kind of main ones I've covered, and we all know by now, Fernandes, Gabriel, and Haaland. Antoine Semenyo, 8.5 million. Gibbs-White, 8. Declan Rice, 7.5. That's fair enough. Anderson, 6.5. So he could still be fairly decent. And I'd expect him to start most games for Man City regardless. But I would expect a drop-off in his FPL output for Elliot Anderson. Harry Wilson at 6.5 million after his move to Leeds. Dominic Szoboszlai, 7 million. Garner, 6. Saka, 9.5. He looked sharp against France in the third place playoff, but that's not really a game you can judge too much on. But we all know Saka can be a brilliant player on his day. Mukiele, 5.5. So yeah, we're seeing quite a lot of expensive players and many price increases. Enzo Fernandez, 7 million, but I don't expect him to be at Chelsea for much longer. Dewsbury Hall, 6.5. Mbumo, 8. Igor Thiago is 8 million, so that prediction is sound. João Pedro, 7.5. I could see him being quite popular. Calvert-Lewin is 6, so people will go there. Yokra, 7.5. I mean, that makes sense based on last season. 7.5 to 8 million. I think that's pretty reasonable. So yeah, as I said, I'm reacting to a lot of these live on stream. Van Heck is 5 million. He might be the Spurs defender of choice, even if Senesi will get more points in general and stuff like that. But from a budget perspective, I think Van Heck would be the better choice there from Tottenham. That's my initial thoughts. Saliba is 6 million, but obviously he's going to be injured for quite a while. We don't know when he's going to be back, but that's quite curious, actually, that Gabriel is 2 million more expensive than William Saliba. Jurien Timber, 6.5. Oh my god, yeah. So, David Raya, 6 million. I'm going to start playing around with some drafts here then. It will be a very rough one. I'll make a separate video where I can put more thought into it instead of just reacting to prices and being bewildered by some of them, because they do seem a bit crazy. So let's go for it by position here. So in goal, Kelleher, who was the second highest scoring goalkeeper last season, 5 million, just like Robin Roths, who was third. Pickford in fourth, 5.5, nothing too surprising there. So David Raya is the most expensive player at 6 million. No one else is at the same. Bart Verbruggen, 4.5. Not too shabby, but the fixtures a bit mixed in the opening 5 anyway. I mean, Martinez is linked to Juventus, and I just don't really see myself going for him. So I'd be tempted by Raya and then just having a budget option. People always talk about sort of rotational picks. Lamens could be decent, and Kinski, what's he at, 4.5? Yeah, he is. I just don't really trust Tottenham, but having one defensive coverage is fine, whether it's Senesi or Van Heck for Defcon, but Pedro Porro, I'm interested to see his price, actually. Is it 5.5 or 6? 5.5, not too bad, considering the amount of changes we're seeing right now. So I'm going to get rid of pretty much all of these defenders as well. Maybe all of these midfielders, although Rodgers might interest me a little bit, and we can jinx the guy if needed. Cherky out. Yeah, Bruno Guimaraes out. I think we're just going to get rid of all of these. Yeah, the front three too. Havertz out. Watkins and Florian Wirtz. So we've got Raya, Branthwaite and Rodgers in here. Might get rid of Branthwaite too. I don't see myself going for Gabriel as things stand. I'm not saying he'll never be in any of my drafts or I'll never buy him. But I think I'll just make this quite simple. Erling Haaland and Bruno Fernandes. I'll try to get a squad with both of them in there. So not a bad start. How do we actually make this work? That's going to be the next question. So with defenders, I was looking at Tarkovsky, but 6 million is crazy. Daniel Munoz, 5.5. Mitchell's 4.5. Only a 1 point difference between the two. Yet they have a very different price tag. Matty Cash, 4.5. Isn't bad, but that guy's a FPL troll, to be honest with you. Van der Ven's 5 million. I'm going to put Pedro Porro in there for now. I might even switch that to Van Heck for a little bit more money. So that's one player down in this position. For Man City, Nico Riley, 6.5. If Matheus Nunes was 5.5, I'd probably buy him. But with this one, I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, Lacroix at 6 million is crazy. Collins is 5.5, another one solid for Defcon. Milenkovic, what's he? So Nico Williams is 5. Alderete, 5 million. Chow, 5. Milenkovic, 5.5. If he was 5, I'd think I'd bring in Milenkovic. Murillo's 5.5 as well. Yellow flagged at the moment. Hill is 5.5. I think FPL.team got that spot on. They predicted that. Ruben Diaz, same price. I'd be interested in Konsa. If he goes to Arsenal, I'd bring in Ezri Konsa. Otherwise, the other one I'm looking at, if I don't go for Raya, for example, is Mosquera, whilst Saliba is out. But I'm going to go for Konsa for now. I think there is a chance he goes to Arsenal. But at Aston Villa, am I that keen on having him? Not really. And I started the previous campaign with Konsa, and it didn't go particularly well. Let's put it that way. Let's go to midfielders. I want to have Gibbs White at 8 million, but I recognise having him, Rodgers and Bruno Fernandes might be tough, whilst also having a balanced squad overall. So I'm already going to push myself to the limit. Anderson could be here, and a budget midfielder. Dewsbury Hall might enter the thinking. Garner isn't too bad either, and he is a bit cheaper than Dewsbury Hall. Cunha's priced at the exact same as Mbumo, 8 million. Matez Fernandes, 6 million. That might pique some people's interest. Ndai is 6 million. Yeah, not a bad price. I started the last campaign with him, and he was very impressive for me with DEFCON, but what I didn't like about Ndai was when he came back from AFCON, that's where he just didn't really show himself to be a consistent enough FPL asset with the goals and assists, which is a bit of a shame, but I could see Ndai starting this season quite well. So yeah, a lot of prices to keep track of. Caicedo 5.5, he had a great start FPL-wise, if we all remember, because of DEFCON, but then he fell off a cliff after December when Chelsea started dropping off themselves. Doku 7.5, Sarr 6.5, nothing too surprising there. So up front, what I'm looking at here, Welbeck 6 million, same as Calvert-Lewin. Igor Jesus, same price. I might go in that direction. Obviously, a very surprising managerial appointment for them with Oliver Glasner. So maybe I'd be less keen on their defenders, but I think their attack could be quite promising. I've already got Gibbs White in here, though, so to have Igor Jesus as well seems a bit too much. So what I'd probably go for now is Welbeck, Calvert-Lewin, dare I say, who had his good moments last season, a purple patch in December, and also in the business end of the campaign. But I've got 60 million left. I've got a goalkeeper remaining who can just be any 4 million option. Yeah, and then 3 defenders. So I'm going to have to make some downgrades somewhere. This is not going to be a particularly fun or easy job to do. So let's go for goalkeepers here. 4 million. Yeah, I might just go for Steele, who's already in my squad anyway. It could just be any of these 4 million options. Yeah, nothing really stands out to me at the moment. So I've got Steele and Raya, Pedro Porro Konsa. Good midfield on paper and attack, but it's not going to be feasible. So defense, let's go for some budget options here. Not liking a lot of these from the get-go. That's where the newly promoted sides could come in handy. Obviously, Coventry facing Arsenal in the opening game of the season. Yeah, not really liking any of these. Greaves. Yeah, good to see him back in the Premier League. Let's just go for Greaves for now, but not really expecting much. I want some more expensive options, so 8 million left, and I've got 2 spots remaining. I'm not going to go for 3 4 million defenders, just to make that very clear. I might go for Mitchell here. Wonder what his ownership is. 3.9? I thought it'd be a bit higher. And the last option, Luka Dean obviously joining Paris Saint-Germain, so we can forget about him. I've got Konsa in there already. Yeah, Renildo's gone up to 4.5. Robinson's gone down to 4.5. Interesting. One option I was considering was actually Heaven. He's 4.5 million in the game. But to be fair, I'd just go for Maguire. Yeah, 5 million for Maguire. That's a little bit better, facing his former club Hull. So if I maybe wanted this to work, I could do Lamens in for David Raya and then have Mosquera for Maguire. I could do that. I mean, I'd still need a little bit more money, but that isn't too shabby. 4.5 in the bank. Yeah, I'd rather go for Maguire, I think. Double United defence, though? Ugh, no, no, no. No, let's backtrack from that one. I think the midfield is where I need to make a downgrade. Yeah. So I already have a few dilemmas. It might even be a case of this, just as a first initial draft, very rough on the edges. Might get rid of one of Welbeck or Calvert-Lewin. Okay, so interesting that both of them have low ownership. So get rid of one of these, Calvert-Lewin for now. Go for Igor Jesus, and then potentially sell Gibbs White. And then I can afford David Raya in goal. I think the last couple of seasons, a mistake I've made is not starting with any Arsenal defenders or Raya in goal. And then I just find myself buying them in a bit late. Maybe that's not true for 2 years ago. I bought Gabriel in. There was all that sort of debate about, is he going to start game week 1? And then Saliba was on the bench or something. Yeah, that might have been 3 years ago now. Time does fly. But Raya would be in there. Maguire. 1.5 million needed, so I can get rid of Gibbs White for Dewsbury Hall. Harry Wilson. I might go for Harry Wilson for the time being. So yeah, that would be my sort of first draft. Doesn't look too bad, but maybe some people are going to be like, oh shit. All right, we'll see. So let's go now to the team selection. I'm definitely not benching Haaland. So we'll put Greaves on the bench. It's not too bad. Captain either Haaland or Bruno Fernandes. That'll be a debate that I'll delve into quite a lot over the coming weeks. We'll save that for another time, but yeah, looking pretty solid. I think Ismaila Sarr could even start, actually. There is a case to maybe downgrade one of my attackers or even midfielders. And that can also help me buy Gibbs White, which is something I'd really want to do regardless. I'd want to see probably like an enticing budget midfielder. Someone that I can rotate every now and then. So that would be the next step. And then possibly there I can buy Gibbs White. But not with Igor Jesus at the same time. So I'm just going to have a look at budget midfielders here. And then start answering some of your questions. So 5.5 and below. Obviously, Lewis Potter has changed position. Lewis Skelly is now a defender in Fantasy Premier League as well. Just going to check Lewis Skelly's price. Oh no, he's a midfielder, 5.5. No, thank you. I'm good. Yeah, Lewis Potter, 5.5. So let me know your thoughts in the live chat. What are you feeling with the prices? Do you think it's too much? Do you think it's the right balance and it makes us actually think and have to prioritize and not just have Gabriel, Fernandes, Haaland all at the same time, which we did last season for the most part. So I think that's fairly interesting as well. So just to kind of give a recap on positional changes. So the ones to look out for, Lewis Skelly is now a midfielder. He was previously a defender. The same goes for Bogard. And I'm going to check his price fairly soon. Krupi Jr. is a midfielder in the game, like Lewis Potter. So obviously Krupi Jr. was a forward, and he was a budget option at that. So Vifa is now a defender for Brighton, and he sometimes got some big hauls. Jorginho Rota is a forward now. Then we have Rio Cardines from Crystal Palace. He's a defender. Ryan Sessegnon has been reclassified, which I mentioned earlier. Marmoush is a forward. Dorgu is a midfielder. No thank you. And then Eric Moreira from Nottingham Forest. He is a defender in the game. Previously, he was a midfielder. So some interesting positional changes. Can't say that some of them have made the other options more enticing. So yeah, people in the chat are mentioning Luke Shaw. Yeah, that could be a shout from Crown and Joshua Hardy. Possibly. I mean, he stayed fit last season and played every single game, but I still have some concerns about that. Maguire has been quite injury prone recently, so that could be a decent one to highlight. And I also want Gibbs White, if I'm being completely honest, based on how he performed at the business end of last season. So I'd be interested in going for a United defender like Luke Shaw. That's not too bad. I mean, the alternative here, and Riot is still fairly template. What's Lamin's looking like? His ownership is 16.3. Good start to the season. And I've got 6 million in the bank. I could even go to Van Dijk. I don't mind going for Van Dijk, you know. But I'm 0.5 over. But that's not bad. It's pretty good. I will have a benching dilemma every week with the structure, though. Just having Welbeck, Haaland, Igor Jesus. I'm tempted to downgrade Welbeck and just go to a budget forward. So let's have a look at the very cheap ones. Let's go for 6 million and below. So Calvert-Lewin, Welbeck, Richarlison, Evanilson. That could be interesting. Voltemada, 6 million. Osler is also priced at the same. Tierno Barry's 5.5, just like Beto. Jorginho Rota at 5.5. Okay. Decent. Chris Wood was awful last season, obviously played by injuries, but that's not too bad. Costellas 5.5. Solanke 6 million. Rodrigo Muniz 5.5. Obviously Raul Jimenez went to Wolves, who are in the Championship. Okay, so I'll probably just go for a cheap option here. Yeah, people mentioning McBurney 5.5. If he was 5 or below, probably. Yeah. So that'll be one to revisit, I think, with the forwards. But for now, I'll probably go for Obi, and that means tripling up on United with Lamens, Fernandes, and Obi. And then I've got 1 million in the bank. And that's where I can start getting closer to Gibbs White. Then I'm 0.5 over. Garner wouldn't be too bad here. Or even Van Dijk to a cheaper defender. But yeah, we're getting somewhere, I think. It's a pretty decent setup. Maybe Rodgers as well. To Szoboszlai. Anderson. I'm not sure how to feel about this guy to start every single week. But yeah, I think one of Rodgers or Anderson would be the ones to maybe offload. Igor Jesus. Let's get rid of him for now. Yeah, and to get Joao Pedro is just not going to be feasible unless I did something like this and then got Garner, and I'd still be 0.5 million off. And then I have 2 DEFCON heavy players in Anderson and Garner. Yeah, it's not terrible. No Arsenal defensive coverage for now until, or if, Konsa joins the Gunners. So that'd be a downside with this. So yeah, I'll probably stick with something like this then. Let's go for Raya in goal, and we'll put Luke Shaw in there for now. So, yeah, looking decent. No Liverpool. Obviously, they've got a good start to the season. So it's not going to be perfect. There will be some flaws with all of these drafts. But yeah, if I can find a way, even to do Bedro Borro, for example, to Van Dijk, that's something I'd be quite keen on. Okay. So I'll leave it here for now and maybe deliberate a little bit more, but it's not too bad. Yeah, exactly. I think players from Spain and Argentina in particular, you've got to be quite conscious about them. And ultimately, I do prefer Borro over the other Spurs defenders like Senesi just because of the price difference. If Senesi was at the same, then maybe that'd be a different story. To be fair with Senesi, who was called up, he didn't play for Argentina pretty much. So, yeah, that could be a decent one. I think Senesi could start the campaign, but not Pedro Porro. No Arsenal defenders, are you mad? But that's what I mean. The rest looks pretty good, but then you pick out that singular detail and then it just sort of undoes the whole draft. You're not going to have one that ticks all the boxes. Ultimately, there will be some sacrifices or compromises, but I would want that Arsenal defender They don't have the best start of the campaign, particularly if you look a bit longer term, but I still think they're fixture proof, and we'll see if they can live up to the last campaign where they were very solid defensively. But yeah, I think Arsenal towards the end were a bit more vulnerable. So let's see the rest of the questions. Let's build a draft. Let's go. Almost. 0.5 million off. I technically did build a draft, but then I wanted to make a few changes already. Now I have 0.5 million left, says easy. That's decent. You can always use that. Buy Luke Shaw, for example. I'm not sure if you mentioned him earlier. Just Parky says, hey dude, thought you would still be on a break. Hope you're well. Commiserations, by the way. Thank you. Yeah, it was very gutting because I don't think we even turned up, to be honest. It was very strange, but it is what it is. Outplayed in the final, and you just got to hold your hands up. But yeah, for the best national team of the decade to play like that in a final, I don't know. Like, for me, it leaves a bitter taste in the mouth. But the journey there was great. 4 trophies in a row. I wish Arsenal could do the same thing. Josh says, hey Dylan, I'm so excited FPL is back. Early takes Mosquera in for me. Yeah, I was thinking of Mosquera from the beginning just because of the Saliba situation, but bit of a cheeky one. I put Konsa in there as a sort of like possible Arsenal coverage at 4.5. That would be criminally underpriced because, I mean, to have Konsa as your sort of backup for Saliba is very promising. That doesn't mean that he will start every single game because you've got Mosquera in there as well, but the good thing about Konsa is he can also play as a right back, so yeah, if he stays at Aston Villa, I'd be less keen on him, and I think Luke Shaw would be the pick of the bunch at 4.5 from what I've seen, and Mitchell doesn't look too bad. You say you like McBurney and Brobby. Yeah, Brobby's an interesting one, and not a big fan of the player, but he has scored some great goals and done fairly well for Sunderland last season. Take on Rashford. Could he start on the wing? I'm not so sure because, based on the reports from last year, it seemed that Rashford's Man United career was all but done. So I just don't really see him being a regular starter, so we'll see what happens in that situation. At 7 million, though, it could be one to look at, particularly if you're struggling for funds and you might need that extra 0.5 like I do. So Rodgers to Rashford would work, but until I see that sort of confirmation that he's going to stay at United and be part of the long-term plans, I'm not so sure because, as things stand, I probably think he's not going to start every single game. Live ranks with climbing up and down. Basically, you go up and down in rank during the match instead of waiting for the rank update after the match. Yeah, I guess that's good. It could make reaction streams a bit more complicated, but I'm not going to just be changing it all the time based on every single minute or goal. It is what it is. Just Parky says there are a couple of good commentary options, but as we often see, championship output does not always relate to Prem output. Exactly that. And there's a lot of uncertainty about these championship players or newly promoted clubs, so it's definitely worth a look, and over the coming weeks I'll be doing a lot of research on Coventry, Hull and Ipswich, and yeah, provide the full breakdown on every single Premier League team with the budget options, differentials, and obviously in other cases premium picks, the ones that we want to go for in terms of the captaincy, because it's very easy for me to say, yeah, Haaland, Bruno Fernandes, but we want to have other options. Maybe Saka will turn up this season. He was injured for large portions of the previous campaign, but he's the type of player that can disrupt the status quo. So that's all going to be talked about in my upcoming videos. The second highest price for a defender, 6.5. Yep, Nico Riley, Jurrien Timber, Virgil van Dijk. I think it's still worth having one of those options, probably at the expense of Gabriel. As I said before, I'd rather have Bruno Fernandes and Haaland and just sort of sacrifice Gabriel in the process, because you can cover Arsenal with Raya in goal at 6 million, Mosquera potentially for the next couple of weeks and months, maybe even Konsa if he joins. I keep mentioning him, but he's still an Aston Villa player, of course. Van Ewijk, a good option, attacking defender with the matchup after Arsenal was good. Yeah, it could be one to look at, and maybe that's the one to go for instead of Greaves. Like I said, I'll be tinkering over the coming weeks and having a large emphasis on drafts, and that's where a lot of the analysis will come into play with the different aspects of the game I mentioned. But yeah, definitely one to look at. I'm not necessarily going to go for Greaves. He's just a familiar name for me. Lacroix likely to go to Chelsea. Makes me less keen on him, to be honest. Could be more rotation. Yes, he's a decent defender, but I think 6 million is way too much for either a Palace or Chelsea defender. Change the drop down from opponent to price. Yeah, that's true. I wanted one for... Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, I was being an idiot, because I was in the list section earlier and I was thinking, wait, what happened? Yeah, thanks for the heads up there. Makes sense. I saw that was one of the new features for FPL this season. They have like a drop-down menu like you see on Fantasy and you see in the Euros and World Cup. Well, at the moment, it looks like Maniz will be a regular starter. Obviously, they have a change of manager as well, so that rotation between him and Jimenez will no longer be a factor because of the change in coach, and also Jimenez is gone. But I'm pretty sure Fulham will buy a striker, and they need to do business because they lost Harry Wilson as well. I am wary of any defenders for Spurs, but they might be a different beast this season. Well, a different beast doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be amazing. It just means they won't finish 17th. So I expect them to improve massively. And the Zerbi showed promising signs at the back end of last season. But yeah, with Senesi, I think he would have been in many people's teams if he was 5 million. The fact he's 6 million will probably mean he's not going to be in many. I think the sweet spot and the correct price, just my opinion, of course, would have been 5.5. It would have given us a real decision to make. But that's just the way I see it. I think with Pedro Porro, you probably avoid. He might not even start the campaign, so it's probably best to go for other players there. Ndai at 6 million, very good cheap option. Possibly, I liked him last season. Maybe he's the one to go for instead of Anderson. But if that's the case, I'm not going to go for Garner as well. So that's something else I need to factor in. So there's quite a few things to sort of tinker with. Yeah, this is not locked in. It's a very rough draft, and I'll be talking about it in my upcoming videos as well, where I can put some more thought into it and have more confidence in some of these picks, because a few of them, I'll be honest, are completely up in the air. So, João Pedro, Haaland, I like the look of. Obviously, no Rodgers. I wouldn't double up with him and João Pedro anyway. Yeah, Garner was better than Ndai last season. Admittedly, Ndai missed quite a few games because of AFCON, but yeah, I'd want a 6.5 million midfielder, to be honest. So, looking at the list, obviously Dewsbury Hall springs to mind. Ndai, as people say. Yeah, I could find a way to bring in Szoboszlai, but that requires a downgrade elsewhere. Could do Van Dijk to Mosquera, but I want Van Dijk for those opening fixtures. As things stand, I have to caveat that. Dango Ouattara, 6.5 million. Not bad, but I don't see myself going for him. Lefay at 6. Gravenberch as well. Tavernier. Stack, 6 million. He was quite underrated last season. Yeah, I think Ndai will close the gap between himself and Dewsbury Hall and Garner when it comes to FPL points. So that could be one to look at. Maybe I'm forcing in Gibbs White and João Pedro. I think that could be the issue with my current draft. But I am 1 million over when it comes to budget. Ismail Assar at 6.5 could be decent. Elliot Anderson as well. I think Elliot Anderson, I mean, you're not going to get many goal contributions from him, but DEFCON is always going to be a factor. Okay, so if I'm sort of trying to find a way to get this to work, yeah, might need to get rid of Van Dijk. Does have quite low ownership. I want to see what Mosquera has. So, Mosquera, let's check his ownership. 12.3%. So a lot of people are on that wave at the moment. Interesting. But still a bit lower owned than Van Dijk. So double Arsenal defence it would be. No Liverpool defensive coverage, but I've got Szoboszlai. Garner's in there instead of Ndai, Dewsbury Hall, and also Ismail Assar. But overall, this could work. So basically, if we're comparing, I'll have the other draft on screen as well. So that was like the first team I built, very rough. And then I've got this, so a few changes in different positions. But yeah, overall, it's looking promising. I don't necessarily have to go for Raya. I know people are mentioning Kinski. He's a bit cheaper at 4.5. There's also Lamens. But I've got Luke Shaw in here. But yeah, I'd probably go in this direction. And then have this for now. And then we'll go to the transfer section here. I'm pretty sure I'm going to tinker with this quite a lot over the coming days. So this is far from over. I think with the bench, yeah, Gibbs White needs to come in. I'd probably bench Garner. No, yeah, Obi, what am I saying? Obi out. Yeah, I think that's pretty decent. Maybe Obi switches with Van Ewijk. And I've got Konsa first sub. Mitchell starting. Ugh. I've got 3 4.5 million defenders. And then I've got a 4 million option. It's not horrible. New managers, so we don't know how Palace will play. Exactly the same goes for Forest. I mean, with Forest, we've got a better idea. We've seen Oliver Glasner for a while now, but yeah, with Crystal Palace, it's a different kettle of fish. Lesson learned, never buy Watkins in Game Week 1. He'll probably score now. I've started the last couple of seasons with Watkins. I'm not going to go there. I hate the guy, FPL-wise. So many troll moments. I'd rather avoid that if possible. So a good question that I've seen in the chat is, how much is Manzambi? 6 million. I liked him a lot in the World Cup. I think he was a massive blow for Switzerland, missing out against Colombia and then Argentina. Yeah, I think Manzambi could be interesting. That's not a bad shout, actually. Yeah, Grady mentioned it here. Manzambi at 6 million is interesting, especially with Villa exits. Cheers as always from Serbia, Dylan. Give the man a like. It's free and helps him. I always appreciate your shout-outs, and that's a very good suggestion. Yeah, I think with all the outgoings for Aston Villa, and obviously they're bringing in Garnacho as well. Yeah, I think Manzambi's the better player, to be honest. Gabriel price should be 7 million. I don't think the penalty miss has anything to do with it. I think 8 million is probably too much anyway, but I think 7 would have been good. Maybe 7.5 at a push. Just don't like the 8 million price tag, but that's just my opinion. Twisted Parker says the prices are good. Going to be a bit of variation. Hopefully it stays the same over the season. Yeah, but it does feel like we say this every year. I'm still a bit skeptical and cynical about the FPL landscape because people always talk about being different and some people follow through with it. I always just do what I feel was best for my team, but maybe I need to think a bit more outside the box. I never look at people's team and just say, oh yeah, let me do this and follow the wave or crowd. But unfortunately, a lot of people do that, and especially when they see a content creator making a team, they just think, oh, I'm going to do well if I copy this creator. It's not always the case. Are you going with mainly just Haaland up top or a three-pronged attack? Mainly Haaland, but I'm open to having a Joao Pedro alongside him. There's another sort of structure where I have 2 cheaper options, maybe like Welbeck and Calvert-Lewin. Igor Jesus isn't too far behind Brobby as well, so that could enter the thinking as well. Finally, someone who has Pedro Porro. Well, I had him in the sort of like very first rough squad I made. Not anymore. I'm not even sure if he'll start Game Week 1, to be honest. And I'm not just saying that and fear-mongering or pushing some agenda. It's just my opinion. Sky MUFC says, Dylan, looking clean, brother. Thank you. I had a haircut yesterday. I'm very superstitious. Throughout the World Cup, I was thinking, okay, I had a trim, a haircut just before the World Cup started. If I have one before the final, we're going to lose or something. But in the end, it had no impact. We still lost, so it is what it is. Amogo Cunha over Bruno. Save a little bit of cash. Well, that's the sort of debate that is introduced because of the pricing, so I can see the appeal or the pros and advantages of it. I just still think with certain players, they're just way overpriced, and Gabriel's going to be one of them, in my opinion. But yeah, Bruno Fernandes at 12, I think that's probably the right one, based on what he did last season. But yeah, easy. Obviously, you're relaying what somebody else said earlier. I think that makes sense. To me, a Spurs keeper is a lock at 4.5. Based on the last 2 seasons, no, but I think they'll improve. So with their new defensive line, Robertson, Senesi, and Van Heck, you'd expect more clean sheets and a massive improvement. I mean, they have to. 17th is not good enough, even if they won the Europa League the season before last. Welbeck is a minutes risk. I think I'd go for 1 at 6 and invest somewhere else, or go a bit more expensive second striker and cheap third. Yeah, that's the debate I'm having myself, and yeah, probably between Calvert-Lewin and Welbeck, Calvert-Lewin will be more secure in general. They both can miss a lot of chances. They've got decent underlying numbers. Probably Calvert-Lewin would be better, the two, but yeah, I get that. Welbeck with Jorginho Rutt and other options like Costellas. It's going to be a bit of a mad one. Crown says Thomas is a DEFCON monster. And Twisted Parky says Sims, Thomas, Asante, Wright could be good. That's what I mean. Like, I need to do more research on some of these players, particularly the newly promoted clubs. But once I do, you're going to have all the information in one place across all my videos, whether it's drafts and maybe specific types of content that you want to see. But yeah, even on holiday, I'll probably be recording stuff. You know me by now. I think I recorded over 10 videos last season whilst on holiday, and I was producing videos almost every day. I'm not going to guarantee the same level of output. I'll probably be a bit smarter with what I choose to post, but yeah, it would be good to have all of that all addressed, and so you're well prepared for the Game Week 1 deadline. But yeah, Thomas, I'll keep that in mind. Maybe instead of Van Ewijk, it could be Thomas. That's a decent shout. In my opinion, the best draft is Haaland only, with Mbeumo, Cunha, and spend 4 million on others. Fair enough. I mean, Haaland is the priority for most people. He always starts Game Week 1 to Game Week 6, 7 very well. I just said that stupid meme unintentionally. Yeah, I think Haaland is probably the priority over Bruno Fernandes if I had to pick one, but United have a great opening fixture against Hull. Decent start overall. And that actually brings me to the FDR, the fixture difficulty rating. So for the first time this season, I'll be showing it. This is courtesy of Fantasy Football Hub. So for the first half of the campaign until Game Week 19, Man City are top. We've got Arsenal, Brentford, Liverpool, and Chelsea in the top 5. United in the top 6. But if we look a bit shorter term, because we're going to use the wild card probably in the first 15 Game Weeks of the season, I wouldn't use it any later than that in most cases. But if we look at the first 10 Game Weeks, for example, well, United are still consistently up there in the top 5 here, top 4 in the first 8 Game Weeks, and they're top for the first 6 Game Weeks where they face Hull, Ipswich, Everton, Man City, Fulham, and Tottenham. Arsenal also very high up, irrespective of where you sort of put the parameters, but that's interesting. First 4 Game Weeks, Arsenal are top, despite facing Aston Villa away and Chelsea at home. Even Sunderland away looks quite tough, so not sure if I agree with Arsenal being top. I think Liverpool should be, based on how the fixtures look, but some of these teams could be completely different this season and be much more difficult in some cases. In other examples or scenarios, it could be, yeah, much more, much easier. So we'll see what happens, but that's it. Quite interesting to see the FDR for the first couple of Game Weeks of the campaign. Fulham might be a bit overlooked. They're top of the FDR for the first 10 Game Weeks. I've got no Fulham players in my draft. Obviously, Harry Wilson did leave. And something else I'll be talking about this season, as I did in the last couple, is FPL Challenge. I got 91 points in the last Game Week of the season. I had Kepa, Pedro Porro, Bruno Fernandes, Salah captain, which didn't go particularly well, Fleming and Bowen. And that was basically giving 8 additional points for any player on a winning team, because a lot of them would have blanked otherwise. So I'm going to go back to my FPL squad as things stand, and there is still room for improvement. I'll also go for the other questions and see what you lot think. So yeah, Ndiaye 6 million. A lot of people have mentioned him. Anderson is not worth it at City. I still think he'll be decent, but I mentioned earlier that I would expect a drop-off for Anderson in terms of FPL output. Yeah, Szoboszlai is not too shabby. Yeah, 5.5 million midfielder I'm not too keen on from what I've seen. Maybe there's a good player in there that I've missed out on or overlooked. Up front, maybe more plausible. But yeah, I'd need to reconsider. With defenders, obviously, Mosquera instead of Van Dijk. That's a bit controversial. I'd expect Van Dijk to score more points, but he is 6.5. That's quite steep for a defender. So going to the transfer section, just to brush up on my knowledge on certain players. So yeah, Brobby 6 million, just like Welbeck and Calvert-Lewin. I'd probably prefer Brobby over Welbeck in terms of minutes, but that's still a close one. Easy says when the Game Week 1 deadline is closing or getting closer, then we will stress again and react unpleasant points after the match. But hopefully not. We want to get off to a good start, and yeah, I think it'll be a solid one. Yeah, I think people were referring to earlier when I had no Arsenal coverage whatsoever. So yeah, I think it's fair to point that out, but I keep on saying it. Konsa could be an Arsenal player fairly soon, and if that's the case, I'd probably have him in my team. If he's at Aston Villa, I'd be less keen on that. What about Kirkes on the Areola in this better team? Yeah, one to look at. He could be a case of an improved player because he was disastrous last season at times. So yeah, Kirkes could be interesting, but I'd rather go for Van Dijk because of Defcon and goal threat. Baraf says my draft: Raya, Palmer, Konsa, Diop, Borro, Shaw, Rodon, Bruno, Rogers, Xhaka, Szoboszlai, Gibbs, White, Haaland, Calvert-Lewin, and Rutter. Yeah, good squad overall. I don't think you need to have those 5 midfielders and 3 forwards per se. You're going to have benching headaches every week. I'm guessing Xhaka would be the one you normally drop out. As for the rest of your squad, I'm happy with it, but I'm not sure if Pedro Porro starts Game Week 1. Yeah, FPL has launched. It was delayed a little bit because of the World Cup, but I think last season it launched on the 21st of July, so just a 2-day difference. Yeah. We're back, and I wanted to do like an early draft before the game launched, but here we are, and I'll just be making a draft with the official prices, which will be a bit more interesting, and it'll age better than if I had done one purely based on predictions from fpl.team and sites like that. Downgrading Garner to Ampadu, Xhaka to upgrade Anderson to Szoboszlai. It's not a bad idea. I would prefer Szoboszlai over Anderson at the moment, but that's an opinion that could change over the coming days. With Garner to Ampadu, Xhaka, I'd be less keen on that. I think Garner is a sniffingly better asset, but I get the thinking with that. Twisted Parky says, I didn't know how much you wanted to talk about it, so didn't say too much, but full-on defensive for 120 minutes more or less was disappointing. It also made no sense because Argentina scored 19 goals in 7 games, and the main strength of the squad was the attack, with Messi spearheading it, with the creativity. Even in games that people say, oh, Argentina were lucky to win, they still created 6 big chances against Egypt, for example, against Cape Verde as well. They deserve to win the game, despite, obviously, the heart, and obviously you've got to give Cape Verde credit for the game they gave, but Argentina deserved to win every single game going into that final, but it kind of disgusted me, to be honest, because under Scaloni, even against Uruguay or in games where Argentina were beaten by the better team on the day, I still had the impression that we were in it, that we were competing, and that we were attacking and showing not our best version maybe, but we were giving a good account of ourselves. We definitely didn't do that against Spain on the biggest stage of them all. And I think if we played even to half our level, we could have given them a good game. I mean, it was still 1-0 to the, second half of extra time. So there's a lot of like what-ifs and regret, I think. Underrated and overrated price. I think a lot of defenders seem fairly overpriced. Like Lacroix, Truffert, even Gabriel to a certain extent. I think 8 million is crazy. But obviously he was great last season. The only defender to score more than 200 FPL points, but 8 million is very steep. I think with midfielders, overpriced. Well, maybe Saka, based on what he did last time out. I think Isak, potentially underpriced, which might surprise you, is Gyökeres. I think he could be really good and improve on last season. The thing is, you've also got Kai Havertz, who, if he stays fit, will probably take more minutes and starts off him. So I can understand the price tag, but want to monitor for sure. If we look at the other prices, I'm fairly sure there are other names that enter this equation. I'd say Senesi at 6 million is a little bit overpriced. But that's just my opinion. In terms of underpriced, maybe Evanilson for Bournemouth. Igor Jesus potentially. In the midfield, I think certain players like Rice and Bruno Guimaraes are fairly priced, in my opinion. Szoboszlai as well. Anderson, based on what he did last season. Gibbs White, 8 million, but let's actually check with a few of them. So obviously people mentioned Odegaard, 6.5 million. That's a good price for him. And he had a very good World Cup. but I'm still not too keen on him as an FPL asset. And there are rumours that he'll leave. I don't think he will, but it's definitely a possibility. I think O'Reilly's a bit overpriced at 6.5. I think 6 million would have been probably spot on for him. But yeah, I've given quite a few examples already. Yeah, and some seem underpriced, like maybe Van Heck, based on how his teammates are priced, like Senesi at 6, but Senesi is the better asset. I understand why there is that difference. It's just, I think Senesi's overpriced, if I'm being honest. Will Szoboszlai be penalty taker at Liverpool or Isak? Yeah, that's a good question. I remember last season, for example, against Inter Milan, when Salah wasn't on the pitch, Szoboszlai took the penalty. I think it's a close one, but I still think Isak would take them. And maybe a Liverpool fan will have a different opinion. That's fair enough. But Szoboszlai would definitely be in the running. He's top 2 penalty takers at Liverpool. Rashford at 7 million feels a little underpriced. Yeah, if he actually starts games for United and he's not going to be sold, then it's definitely one that we should monitor and add to the watch list. So penalty taker at Villa. I mean, Tielemans isn't great anyway. I know he scored against Senegal in the World Cup, but he's got a very hit or miss penalty record, like Ollie Watkins. Obviously, Rodgers has gone as well. I think with Aston Villa, we could see McGinn on penalties. That'd be my 2 cents on it. Otherwise, you look at the erratic Ollie Watkins because he is not reliable whatsoever. Jacob Thomas says, Thomas, 4 million for Coventry, had 7 goals and assists and averaged 8 DEFCON per game. It's pretty good, and I appreciate the breakdown there. I'll be doing a lot of research on all of these newly promoted players as well. I don't want to comment on players that I haven't watched too much of or that I don't know all the stats off by heart, which I usually do. So I will be delving into this in more detail, and you could find Thomas in some of my drafts fairly soon. But thanks for the heads up there, Jacob Thomas, your namesake. I've got Rice, Schade, Ndiaye, Szoboszlai, and Bruno. Yeah, solid midfield. I've got a few reservations about Schade, but he's the type of player who can blank 5-6 games in a row and then score a hat-trick. He's done that on several occasions now in his Premier League career. But yeah, the rest I think are a bit more reliable and consistent. Yeah, Manzambi's one to look at. I'd be quite interested in him over Garner potentially as that sort of 6 million midfielder. So definitely don't write him off. I do wish Fulham gets a penalty before their good run of fixtures, before Game Week 6, because Robinson would be extremely good. Yeah, at 4.5 million, Robinson looks enticing. Obviously, he had a great season the year before last, but that wasn't the case, obviously, in the campaign gone by. I think you need more City coverage, a defender given fixtures, midfielders we don't know who plays. I'm quite happy with Haaland for now, but I get your point. I wouldn't mind a defender, but I just feel like they're very overpriced. I mean, there is a case to maybe sell Mosquera and bring in a City option, but that requires a downgrade elsewhere. And yeah, Joao Pedro would be one of the standouts, I think, for people, or maybe Szoboszlai or Gibbs White. But I'm not sure if it's worth it, and I still think Arsenal have the better defence. Yeah, Jeremy Jacket will be a centre-back for Liverpool. Yeah, alongside Van Dijk. Obviously, Konate's gone to Real Madrid. We'll see how he does, but we just don't know too much about him yet. How we would do in terms of DEFCON. I think he'll be quite good, actually. Probably better than Konate, but yeah, I think with Jeremy Jacket, it's a question mark. Benjamin mentioned Jeremy Jacket as well. Yeah, interesting. I mean, the price isn't too bad. He is yellow flagged at the moment, but that could be the way into that Liverpool defence. So I'm open-minded about it. I'm not going to say, oh, I need Virgil van Dijk, but I still think he justifies the extra million or $1.5 million over the others. Now, you could argue, why not Senesi over Van Heck? I just think the gap between those two won't be as big as Van Dijk and Jacket, but that's my current feeling on it. Yeah, last season Kirkes rotated heavily with Robert, but also he wasn't great. There was a reason why Robertson still played. If we look back to Liverpool's title-winning campaign, one of the sort of rooms for improvement or areas for Liverpool to maybe enhance their squad was left-back, because they felt that Robertson was a weakness and Kirkes wasn't good enough to really establish himself as the definitive first choice. What about Kirkes instead of Van Dijk? He's nailed with only Tsimikas as rotation. Yeah, 5.5 is a decent price tag for him, but I'd probably lean towards Jacket actually at 5 million. But that's also from a DEFCON perspective, which has been slightly nerfed this season per se, based on the bonus points, but not by much. I don't think the difference will be huge, but it does have an impact on how defenders in particular and certain midfielders will score on the bonus point system. Twisted Parky says, will Timber be fit? Him out and Saliba makes me wary of 2 Arsenal. Yeah, Timber obviously played in the Champions League final, but he would have come on earlier or even started the game if he was fully fit. Then he missed the entire World Cup. So, yeah, I'm quite worried about Timber and Arsenal defence. I think that's a good point. And I would expect a drop-off for Arsenal. We saw that at the back end of last season where we saw them more vulnerable, conceding more goals, not keeping as many clean sheets. So I think it's definitely a good point to raise. And that's why a Liverpool or even, as you mentioned, a City defender might be worth it and just stick with the 1 Arsenal defensive coverage. But I think a lot of people will have an Arsenal option in there. So you're not really going to gain too much from it. You're kind of protecting yourself against the template there. I saw Kinski and Rofs rotate very well, but a bit more expensive. Yeah, that's the problem with it. Obviously, Rofs is 5 million, which is still a fairly solid and justified price tag for him. With Kinski 4.5, we'll see how he does. Do Tottenham go into the transfer market and buy a goalkeeper? That's still possible. Vicario is on the verge of leaving, but yeah, I've got my reservations on Tottenham defensively still. Easy says, if Spence leaves Spurs to Inter, Van der Ven likely be first choice left back with his pace. I know Spurs have Robertson, but the pace and attacking style of Van der Ven will be first choice for the Zerbi. Yeah, but they could still rotate between their centre backs. Obviously, they could play back 3. I think that's what Tottenham will do this season with Van der Ven, Van Heck, and Senesi. Bedrobor on the right, Udogie on the left, or Spence if he stays. So I don't see Van der Ven playing left back at the moment, despite you presenting a decent case for that being the case. I don't see me going any Villa. That's fair. Conser's mainly in there for the Arsenal links, if I'm being honest. I'm not going to triple up on Arsenal defensively, though. Garnacho could be a bargain. I've never liked Garnacho as a player, to be fair. Obviously, he had a decent season, I think, 2 years ago. He is 6 million, so one to monitor. So at Aston Villa, he could definitely go up a level, and Unai Emery can get the best of certain wingers and strikers. But yeah, one to monitor, I think. But I need to see something in pre-season before making that sort of jump. Arbeloa will likely buy some youngsters from Real Madrid, probably Raul Garcia as a striker. Yeah, that's a strange managerial appointment as well. We'll see how he does in the Premier League, but yeah, Fulham is an unknown entity this season. So would Crystal Palace. I think those 2 are the main clubs to look out for and gain as much insight and information throughout pre-season. With Nottingham Forest, there is an element of change, of course, but we know a bit more about Oliver Glasner and his style. So I think with that one, we can be a bit more prepared for what's to come. I meant 2-pronged attack, not 3. No worries. But yeah, we obviously engage in that conversation about forwards. I think there is a genuine debate for both avenues, and at the moment I'm leaning towards the 2 up front with a budget 3rd striker, which allows me to then have a bit more money invested in the midfield. So yeah, it has been a while with FPL streams. I actually forgot to even set a goal for the super chats, but we'll just keep that one fairly simple. And yeah, we'll see how long we go on for. But yeah, I'll be answering more questions. Obviously, we've gone through a lot of information already. I've learned a lot about FPL today, with the prices in particular. I only knew about maybe 5 to 10 before going live, and now I know some of them. Maybe not all by heart, but I will do fairly soon as we get more familiar with the game. Smash the like button of this video, subscribe to my channel. We are closing in on 40k on YouTube, and after that we'll have more objectives in the future, but we'll take it one step at a time, and 40k is next on the agenda. The aim is to get this stream to over 100 likes on the platform, and also hit the notification bell, click the hype button on the YouTube app, and check all the links in the description. There's my Twitter, Instagram and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM. There's also the Discord server. I'd highly recommend you check that out. Also check out my Patreon and the Championship, so the join button on YouTube, and also going to patreon.com/FPLDylan. You get early access to my videos, prior to comments, and many other perks at the beginning of each month. So the next stream will likely be in just under a month's time for the Game Week 1 deadline. If possible, I'll do a stream beforehand, but I will be on holiday very soon. But I will be gifting memberships in that said stream, and I'll be doing that every single month, once every single time. And of course, I'll be doing multiple deadline streams. Every single deadline will be covered. That's the plan. UCL Fantasy as well. and there'll be reaction streams, which are very popular at the beginning of the season, and I'd like to do that until the very end if the reception is still there as well. So I will go live for a little bit longer, depending obviously on interactions and also if we hit the super chat goal. So let's get this show up and running. Josh says, thanks, Dylan. I have Rashford until I also hear if he starts on the wing or not. I'm spare to upgrade to Mbeumo. Oh, sorry, 1 million spare. Not sure about my team as I like getting bench boost out of the way in Game Week 1. Nightmare to get rid of. Yeah, the problem with the Game Week 1 bench boost strategy is you will then have a lot of money in the bank and some benching dilemmas for the next couple of weeks. And it's very natural after the first set of fixtures to then say, oh, I made a mistake with this pick, or I want to get this player in. He's very popular. He just got a lot of points. Maybe it's going to be his season. You know, Rangers was one example in the previous campaign. And then you sort of already book in a transfer. It makes it more difficult, I think, with the bench boost strategy. But that's not to say it can't work on Game Week 1. It obviously can. But I'm just a bit worried about that as well. And we just don't know too much about certain teams and players yet. And we see changes in trends about the best teams for the upcoming season and stuff like that. Andrew Barton says, my front three to be Haaland, Brobby and Solanke. Yeah, good prices for the last two, 6 million. So that allows you to then invest more money elsewhere and have Haaland. I'm guessing you've got Bruno Fernandes as well. But I'm just curious if you've got 5 regular starters in the midfield. Because if you do, you're going to have benching headaches every single week with the 8 attackers per se. Just Parker says, I have weed. I'm joking. Poro. I don't know why, by the way. Some people are a bit like Spanish phobic or whatever, or they have this weird thing about accents. I mean, just to make it very clear for those that don't like the way I say Spanish names, I speak Spanish at home. I speak Spanish in general. I don't just force it to sort of sound exotic. I don't do that sort of bullshit, but there you go. Twister Parker says, I am superstitious too. Won't change England, but I watched a game in while we are still in it. Yeah, I sit in the exact same spot, and I didn't do it this time. I maybe should have. Wear the same clothes. Obviously, they're clean. But yeah, I do everything possible to ensure that my national team and favourite club win. Grady says, love seeing the whole kit back in FPL. Got McBurney just for the vibes. I wonder which team you support, but if it is Hull, congratulations and good luck for the season. Josh says, early doors, who would you choose 5? Which 5 would you choose out of Mosquera, Tarkovsky, Shaw, Jacket, Munoz, Vifa? If I had to sell one of them, it's probably going to be Vifa. Twisted Parker says, Torp has amazing output for a midfielder and Rudoni, but it's the Prem. That's what I mean. And you raised this point earlier. The output can be great in the Championship or even in another league for certain signings, but it's a different kettle of fish when it comes to this competition. Chelsea likely playing a 3-4-3 with 2 wing-backs, likely getting a more attacking role. Yeah, and Chelsea are linked to plenty of former Bayer Leverkusen players or current ones like Grimaldo. And if Grimaldo joined Chelsea, I mean, he'd probably be priced at 6 or 6.5 million, but that'd be very interesting and probably worth it more so than Lacroix. I'm not confident with any Ipswich attackers. They were toilet last time. That is true. I'm going to likely do Haaland only with Cunha instead of Bruno. That's fair enough. You don't need to go for both of them. Obviously, you made the question earlier about, is it ridiculous to go about Haaland and Bruno? Obviously, you know my thoughts on that now, but that's fine. I don't think I'm going to take Gabriel at 8 million, to be honest. And we also saw him struggle at times physically. And with Arsenal not having Saliba for a while, Timber is also a big question mark. I mean, I've currently got double Arsenal defence. I'm quite open to changing that and having Van Dijk, even Jeremy Jacket, as some people are saying, or maybe just going for a City defender instead. But I'm quite wary about that one. Good to see you, Bellardi. FPL Bellardi first team and FPL Bellardi second team. Fair enough. I mean, technically, it's not something I condone or it's not something that FPL like in general, but do whatever you wish. I mean, I also manage a family member's team. I haven't ever had 2 teams myself, although that would help. It ensures that I will always do well, in my opinion. Yeah, Jacob, I'll see you then. Obviously, that'll be the 21st of August. That's the Game Week 1 deadline in the build-up to Arsenal versus Coventry. I will be back in London by then, I think. So, yeah, I'll be having a usual deadline stream there, so to speak. Guessing the three most owned players will be Fernandes, Haaland, and Joao Pedro. I don't think Joao Pedro... Oh, wow, his ownership is very high. Okay, scrap that. Maybe I'll erase what I was about to say. Yeah, at the moment, that seems to be the case. Fernandes is third, Joao Pedro is second, and Haaland is top for ownership. Rodgers is quite template, 38.2. New signing, decent price for him. Yeah, so I've got quite a few template players then. So something to look at, that's for sure. My FPL ID, I think, yeah, it's like around 18,000. It was a bit higher last time. Anderson or Semenyo? Depends what you do with the rest of the budget, but I think Semenyo will score more points. Would it be enough to justify the extra 2 million? Not so sure, but if budget's no issue, I'd say Semenyo. Ponce could break the game if he goes to Arsenal. Yes, and he's going to be very template. What about gambling a bit with Palmer? Yeah, he's had a proper off-season, that's true. I still have my reservations about that, to be honest. So if I go back to the transfer section, I actually didn't see Palmer's price. Yeah, 9.5. Yeah, what you would expect, really. Same as Saka. I think that's fair enough. I mean, there is a case for Palmer, but you've also got Rodgers and Joao Pedro at 7.5. I think both of them will offer better value. The new features added in FPL. Well, they made a few changes to the bonus point system, which I alluded to earlier. So with DEFCON, it's not going to be as powerful when it comes to BPS. It's not a massive difference. It shouldn't impact it too much, but it is less favorable towards players like Anderson, for example. A lot of the features are mainly based on the sort of the UI, the user interface with the toggle menu where you can see ownership and next fixtures and stuff like that, like you could in UCL Fantasy. You now see that in FPL. But yeah, once new features are confirmed, I'll be talking about that on the channel. Obviously, we got the price reveals yesterday. It's a bit redundant now with the game being launched, but yeah, the chips are the exact same. There's no AFCON transfers because there's no AFCON, and ultimately it wasn't very popular in the community. Barnes might finally play regularly now that Gordon's gone, says Andrew. Yes, a possibility, but with Eddie Howe, you never know. Should scouting bonus be added in FPL? Well, they're not going to do it, and it's a different developer in charge of FPL compared to World Cup Fantasy, but I like that sort of thing. I'll be honest, though, with scouting bonus, it became pretty irrelevant in the knockout stages, particularly in the latter stages of the competition, but it's quite good at the beginning to drive engagement and also add another dimension to the game. It also makes people think outside the box, but what I don't like is that sometimes you buy a player, it says they have less than 5% ownership, and then the deadline goes, and then you realize, oh, that player is no longer scouting bonus eligible, even if you kept refreshing and it was updating quite regularly. But then as you get to the deadline, it just surges and you have no impact or control over that transfer. Yeah, Haaland 15.5 million, even higher than the season before last. It makes it a big decision to make whether you start the season with him or not, and how do you find a way to fit both him and Bruno Fernandes in there. Just Parky says, exactly, defense Argentina's weakest point. That's the thing. Argentina under Scaloni have kept a lot of clean sheets, over 60 in, 104 games. But in this World Cup, it was quite clear that the attack was the main strength. So it made no sense to sort of play the way we did. And I don't know, like, I'm not going to buy into the conspiracy theories I've seen, but I find it very strange, the reaction and the attitude of the players when they came out of the dressing room. It seemed like a funeral. It made no sense to me why they were like that. In the build-up, whether it's training sessions or even coming into the stadium, they were very positive, upbeat, and stuff like that. Obviously, Easy is referring to one of those conspiracy theories. I mean, I don't think it's true. Like I said, Spain played better. They deserve credit. But all I'm saying is the reaction of the players and stuff was just really odd. It just didn't seem like a World Cup final. And I sort of mentally prepared myself during the game, especially when both centre-backs come off injured, the red card and stuff. I just think, yeah, like, it's very unrealistic for us to win. We need a miracle. What about Maddison, Dylan? I mean, he's very injury prone. The thing about Maddison is he usually if I'm not mistaken, I think he starts seasons well, then he gets injured, and then he just doesn't come back as the same player, or it takes him a while to get back to full fitness and with good form. But Maddison could be good at 6.5 for sure. I need to see him have a full preseason, no injury concerns whatsoever, and for him to be a regular starter, because Spurs could still go for a slightly different structure or just go for different players in that position as well. So yeah, the site that I used to check the best fixtures was Fantasy Football Hub, but you need a paid subscription to see that in terms of like the whole list and to be able to change in terms of the parameters, the first 6 game weeks, first 4, whether it's the first after the campaign. I was proper down for 3-4 days, so I'm feeling you. I think the outcome was correct given the final we saw, but it still hurts. Yeah, after the England loss you're referring to. Yeah, I mean, losing a World Cup final is one of the worst feelings you can ever have, in my opinion, if you're emotionally invested in football like I am. And I'll be honest, all the sort of hate towards Argentina and stuff, it just makes me support the team even more. And I get, some of the criticism, some of them is valid, but some of them are complete bullshit, to be honest, and others go way beyond football. And you see cases of people politicizing the whole game. Yeah, the less said about that, the better. But there's a lot of like virtual signaling and double standards. And yeah, if you follow me on Instagram, you probably have seen my takes on it. And I always stand up for what I believe is right. But yeah, I do feel like there was a targeted campaign against Argentina. But ultimately, it is what it is. There's still a lot to be proud of. And to win 4 trophies in a row, not many people will like that. And they will be jealous and stuff like that. Not in every single case, but some people definitely are. And for me, it just fuels motivation. It makes me more proud to be from the country I am from. And yeah, it is what it is. Congratulations to Spain. But Argentina still had a good World Cup. It's just the final leaves a bitter taste in the mouth based on the performance more than anything else. If we lost 2-0, playing the way I've seen Argentina play in every game, creating chances and, being there from the beginning, competing, not going back and all this breaking up play and stuff, it's just really odd. Sure, Argentina play, let's say over the limit, or they test the boundaries. They're very aggressive and physical, but so is every South American team. If you see Colombia play against Argentina, who's the dirtier team out of the two? Colombia most likely in every single game, over 20, 30 fouls. But play football as well. If you want to be aggressive, go for it, but be smart. And you saw Enzo Fernandez get a stupid red card. You shouldn't be doing that when you're on a yellow card already. So it is what it is. Krupa Jr. at 7.5. Yes, it does feel a bit high. If he was 6.5, I'd probably have him in my team. But yeah, for a little bit more, you can go for Gibbs White, for example. So yeah, I do agree that's a little bit high. I would give it to McGinn. Yeah, I think McGinn could be the sort of underrated shout for penalty duties for Aston Villa. Mateus Fernandes, I'm not so sure how to feel about him, to be honest, Wei-Seng, but yeah, might be decent. He's not going to get many goal contributions, but I think for DEFCON and maybe bonus points, he could be quite underrated. Jacob says when Liverpool finish pre-season, they will only have 3 fit forwards, Isak, Ngamoa and Chiesa. Gakpo and Munoz not joining until right before the season starts. Yeah, it's a good thing to highlight, and the World Cup always changes things up a little bit. Obviously, Netherlands didn't go very far. They were knocked out in the round of 32, but yeah, it's definitely something else to add into the thinking when building your first drafts. But very soon, you're going to see a dedicated first draft video, maybe even an early draft, so to speak, just very rough, but it'll have a bit more thought put into it compared to the one I've done today. Maybe it's going to be the same one, but I can actually explain every single pick, and we can delve into that in the comment section very soon. Too many changes at Villa, not going there yet. That's fair enough. I'll be honest with Konsa, it's mainly because of the Arsenal factor. And if he does join, I'd probably have Raya and Konsa and then go from Mosquera to a Liverpool or City option. So if I could find a way to force in Van Dijk, that'd be nice. But it's not completely locked in here. So yeah, Garner, Wilson, Szoboszlai, Fernandez, Gibbs White. Maybe I'll just get rid of Joao Pedro then. He is quite template too. Sesko hasn't been talked about a lot. I know he's yellow flagged, but he should be fine for Game Week 1. Mateta 6.5. Nicholas Jackson is back, but he's not going to play. Yeah. Some interesting things here. You know what I'm going to probably do for now? Get rid of Gibbs-White, unfortunately, and then go for Rodgers. So yeah, that's going to be my current plan. I mean, I've got 1 million in the bank now. Obviously, after selling Joao Pedro, I could still find a way to bring him in. Yeah. I will probably go for a newly promoted defender. And Coventry seem to have quite a few interesting ones. Mitchell is a big question mark for me. I mean, arguably the whole defensive line is a little bit iffy. So 1 million in the bank. Something else I could do is upgrade Ghana. I really want Gibbs-White, to be fair. But yeah, as you can see, 1 million over budget. Maybe I'll just go without Chelsea and then just get rid of Morgan Rogers or Szoboszlai. We'll go for this for now. This looks pretty decent. So make the transfers. As you can see, I've already tinkered quite a bit throughout the stream. And yeah, Ryer in goal, Shaw, Van Dijk, Mitchell, Wilson, Garner, Rodgers, Fernandes, Gibbs-White, Haaland captain, Igor Jesus. It's a decent first draft, but still room for improvement. Yeah, Palmer's been mentioned. Obviously, Tustapaki said in the next message, but yeah, I think Palmer deserves a mention for sure, and he could be one of those players who had a poor campaign last time out, Saka as well, and they'll sort of challenge the status quo. So we don't just rely on Bruno Fernandes and Haaland for captaincy or for our premium options. I think those two would be the other really enticing choices in the midfield. Most of the players that play, at least until the quarterfinals, will only be training a few weeks before the Premier League starts. Yeah, but I'm a bit surprised about Gakpo, for example. You know, he was eliminated quite early on. Ron Gibbons says, just want to say thank you to everyone in the live chat who supported me last week when I was struggling. I appreciate it. Good to see you, Ron. Kirkes isn't better than Robertson yet. Would always have gone Robertson first. Yeah, last season, I think there were plenty of games where Robertson should have started over Kirkes, and that was always one of the more difficult things to predict in that Liverpool lineup. But it'll be interesting to see if Tottenham will start Robertson over a doggy and Jed Spence if he stays. Good night, Dylan. Looking forward for your first draft. Yeah, hopefully in the next couple of days, I'll be flying out this weekend. But yeah, after that, I'll still want to record some more videos. The drafts will be the main focus. That's usually what people want to see. But I'd like to also make different pieces of content if possible. And yeah, we'll see what the community wants. Ola Aina thoughts. I actually haven't seen his price, so I'll quickly check that for you. And I'm guessing he's 5 million then. 4.5, okay. I can see why you've mentioned him. New manager, there could be some question marks about his starting berth. That wouldn't have really been the case under Nuno Espirito Santo. And obviously they went through so many different managers last season. Ange Postecoglou, Sean Dyche, and Vitor Pereira. But yeah, I think if Aina is still a regular starter, that could be a decent choice at 4.5, maybe more enticing than Konsa. There's already a template. FPL launched only a few hours ago. Well, it's FPL for you. I think UCL Fantasy is a bit better in that regard, particularly at the beginning where you've got so many choices, 36 teams, and people are usually a bit different, and content creators aren't as influential in that game. So yeah, with FPL, unfortunately, we always have that sort of element of the game. Just Parky says, Van der Ven burned me so much last season. I am so traumatized. 2 massive hauls on my bench, and every time I started, he did, yeah. So you probably had him when he scored twice against Everton, right? He got over 20 points. That was a bit of a crazy one. What do you think of Hato? Not sure if he starts regularly for Chelsea, and I do expect him to go into the market for a wing-back. Hato is more of a centre-back by trade during his time at Ajax, but he can play both positions, and Chelsea will play more of a, well, back three on the Xabi Alonso. We saw that at Real Madrid and predominantly at Bayer Leverkusen. But Hato could have a case for left centre-back. I think that's definitely plausible. So one to look at as well. I think there are a lot of wait-and-sees for this season. Players that weren't particularly great last time out, but they could definitely improve big time this season. Yeah, I think Kinski is probably first choice, but Dubravka has been signed. People haven't really seen that for Tottenham Hotspur. I wouldn't be surprised if Dubravka was first choice for now. Like, that is a genuine debate. But if you're asking me, I'm going to say Kinski. At the moment, I have Thiago in my team, but nobody else does yet, says Twisted Parky. Maybe take out, but I need to balance what I think versus rest of the world a little better this season like I used to. Yeah, sometimes people have their gut feelings and some intuition and they don't follow through with it. It's very important, I think, to back your gut because you'll have so many regrets if you don't follow through compared to if you follow the template and then something goes wrong. I mean, you sort of blame yourself for copying others or being influenced by the sort of hive mind. But when you have that sort of differential and you don't go through it, I'm telling you, it's a very bad feeling in FPL. I'm hearing quite a few getting rid of their bench boost in Game Week 1. I'll discuss this sort of strategy and maybe even build a draft focusing on that Game Week 1 bench boost sort of approach. I can't say that it's really at the forefront of my ideas. I'm not sure if I'll necessarily go for it, but it's definitely one to consider. And Game Week 1 bench boost has always been a talking point. There are rumours that Arsenal are trying to sign John Stones. Yeah, I'm not sure how to feel about that one. In fact, I wouldn't really want to see that. I'd rather Arsenal sign Konsa and also spend a lot of the budget on attackers. Obviously, they signed Zolis today. Trossard's gone. I still think we need a left winger, maybe a striker and another midfielder. Ndai's a really good price, so tempted to go for him. He was pretty decent for me last season at the beginning, so it's a pretty good one. But you've also got Ghana, who can get DEFCON and stuff like that, but I like Ndai as a player. He was quite frustrating at times, particularly in terms of end product against Man City in that famous 3-3 draw, which helped Arsenal win the league. Ndai missed a big opportunity or two, but I just like the way he plays. He's on penalties as well, and he can get DEFCON, which did drop off quite considerably in the second half of the campaign, but he's still capable. Yes, stack 6 million is still a decent price for him. If he was 5 million, he'd be in my team for sure, but at 6, I'm not so sure. No, I won't wash the shirt till it's over. Well, I washed it after the league phase, says Twisted Parky. Yeah, that's fair enough. I use different shirts, to be honest, but maybe I should have used a lucky one. I know the exact clothes I wore for the 2022 World Cup final when we beat France on penalties. Yeah, I should have maybe worn the same stuff, but we just played like shit the other day, which is a shame. Afternoon as well, Kevo. Opinions on Vuskovic. Yeah, so a lot of transfer activity happening in the Premier League, of course. So you had Van Heck going to Tottenham Hotspur, Vuskovic going the other way. At 5 million, though, I'm not so sure how to feel about that one. I'd be more inclined, I think, with Vifa at the same price point. I think he could be an example of a positional change that actually results in a big improvement in FPL output, as opposed to Lewis Skelly, who is now a midfielder. I think Vifa could be one of the most improved, and he should be comfortably in the 100-point zone. He got 94 points last season. You look different somehow. Haircut and more of a shave as well. That's why. The Swiss dude, I am worried for Villa, says Twisted Parky. So Manzambi. Villa, so many changes, and so often we buy the hot new thing and does not perform. Yeah, and also it's hard to judge a player based on a few games for Switzerland compared to Aston Villa in the Premier League. New division. Yeah, it's going to be a completely different story, but I like the player. I think he's got a bit of potential about him. I said this before, I would have rather have signed Manzambi for his fee compared to Rodgers for 117 million, but ultimately I want Arsenal to get some players in. Obviously Zolis was signed today, but more needs to be done. What's your target points for Game Week 1? A green arrow. Well, I say green arrow. To just get off to a strong start compared to most people. It could be a low-scoring week. I think typically Game Week 1 usually has 80-plus points as a sort of solid game week. And that's what I usually get. But as high as possible. 90-plus would be the sort of ambitious aim. And with that, I should have a relatively well-performing match day. Brobbey or Igor Jesus? I'd lean towards Igor Jesus at the moment. Cunha or Vuskovic? I think in this one, probably Cunha. How do you check ID without points tab? You go to Game Week History in the Pick Team section. If you go to the website, you'd be able to do that check of the ID. Do you like Nico Riley as a pick? Not so much because of the 6.5 million price tag. I think it's a little bit overpriced. Wasting says, happy for the hijack. Well, let's see how he performs first, but I think it's a good player, Premier League proven, but it's still way too much money. But you could say that about so many signings nowadays. I mean, the market is completely gone. I have all Palmer, Joao Pedro, and Rodgers in my team. Oish, all right. Good luck with that one. Yes, but scouting bonus becomes irrelevant because Paul gets smaller. Yeah, and that won't be the case in the Premier League. Obviously, that's the disadvantage with cup competitions. But yeah, I think with the Premier League, it could work fairly well. But just don't expect it because different developers and games as well. Which three clubs do you think will get relegated? Would love another Sunderland situation to surprise. It's just typically we're sort of used to the newly promoted clubs not having the financial firepower or the player quality to really compete with those that were already in the Premier League. So it was good to see that sort of broken last season. I think I haven't done any predictions yet in terms of winners, who finishes in the Champions League spots and stuff, but if I had to predict who goes down, I'm going to say Coventry, Ipswich and Hull. At the moment, I don't know enough about them, but I think they will go down, yeah. In terms of those that were in the Premier League that I think will maybe struggle, I think Sunderland with the balance of the European competitions, but I still think they'll stay up. I think Leeds could be in trouble, and I think Forest will probably stay up. Yeah, I think they will. I've got some concerns about Fulham, though, and even Palace. I do have a few reservations about them, but a bit of a boring answer. I'm going to say the three newly promoted clubs will go down. Let's see how that goes. What do you mean Argentina told they must lose? That's what Easy said, so it's not my words. There are rumours around that. My only point is just the reaction of the players, the attitude. They just look off. I'm not saying they were told, oh, you have to lose or whatever. There were some rumours that because of the stuff about the Falklands, the banner they had, they were sort of told, oh yeah, if you don't throw away this match, you're not gonna qualify for the next 2 World Cups or something, or you're gonna get a 10-year ban going for the player and also for the country. Yeah, I don't believe it, just to sort of express my opinion, but I just look at the videos that have come out from the dressing room. It just seems like a funeral. I don't know why they were like that when we had 4 trophies in a row. We got into the World Cup final scoring 19 goals in 7 games. It's just really odd behavior to see how excited and positive they were to then how negative. And some people even thought that a few players looked like they were crying before the game even started. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But yeah, we can talk about that another time. Isak, thoughts? I'm not so sure about that one, to be fair. He's another one, very injury prone, even at his time during his time at Newcastle. I think with Isak, I'd rather just spend the money on Haaland, and then you've got Joao Pedro and the cheaper options we've discussed, like Igor Thiago as well. Not all of them, Martin, but yeah, a fair few were Ronaldo fanboys. Yeah, some of them won't be hating on Argentina so much when Messi's gone, but yeah, it's very weird behavior. Like, I get it. You don't have to like every country or team in terms of football, but there was definitely a smear campaign for sure. We need Infantino to go, says Twisted Parky. It meant there was a cloud over the whole thing. Trump didn't help. Also, we all know nothing, but there is more to the Infantino story that might come out. I mean, look, the biggest farce, which I've said before, is the Balogun situation where he gets a red card and then is suspended for a year. And the president was kind of set from the beginning when Ronaldo had that red card and he was supposed to miss the first 2 games of the World Cup. But then FIFA like, oh, we want Ronaldo to play. Let's suspend the sentence for a year. I mean, that's complete bullshit. And then you see Caicedo and a Qatari player, Otamendi, who was a French player for Argentina, all basically had those suspensions, but they were all suspended. So it's just really weird. Yeah, outside of football, watch this space. I mean, yeah, but the same goes for a lot of FIFA presidents in the past, whether it was Sepp Blatter. Yeah, I don't really trust any of them, to be honest, but that's my 2 takes on it. And, people kept saying, oh, the World Cup's rigged for Argentina. Yeah, the same people aren't talking anymore, but that's because they really wanted Argentina not to win, but that's their problem, not ours. We've still got 3 stars to our name. We should have more, and we've got the most trophies of any national team, so yeah, it's going to bother some people, but I'll still be quite happy with that. What about Sarr from Palace? 6.5 million and typically a solid enough offensive threat. My problem with Sarr is he's quite inconsistent, but He's got a good record against certain teams like Aston Villa. So whenever he plays against them, I don't mind having him as a 1-week punt. But yeah, whenever I bought Salah last season, it was a bit awkward. I think I actually bought him for the Aston Villa game where Palace won 3-0. He scored and then got injured. Yeah, Rodgers to start is something I'd be quite open to. And that can also open up the possibilities of buying Joao Pedro up front. So it's not something I'm discounting, but I'm just not entirely sure about Ismail Assar. Yeah, I'm not sure about Gakpo, why he's unavailable here. Slot always starting Kirk has convinced me early he isn't the one. I mean, look, Slot had the credit in the bank for winning the Premier League. He did a good job there, but it goes to show that he definitely inherited a good squad from Jurgen Klopp, and a lot of factors also aligned. You know, Arsenal had a lot of injuries and they just didn't look like winning the league that year. A lot of red cards at the beginning, and Liverpool were the best team. Slot found that right balance, but he really struggled when he spent that much money. And you look at the names like Frimpong, Wirtz, and Isak, it's like, wow, really good signings, but it doesn't really make sense. You know, I think with Frimpong, that suits a back three formation. And yeah, with the other ones, Isak and Wirtz, then you also get Ekitike as well. It just seemed to be all over the place, that transfer strategy. Lewis Mark says, if we sign Konsa, I will honestly stop supporting Arsenal after 37 years of doing so. He's the most basic defender around. I'm just saying, I'd rather have him than the other defenders that we've been linked to, but it's mainly because of the Saliba situation. And to have Konsa as a backup isn't too bad, but yeah, I'm not a massive fan of Konsa, to be honest, and I'd want Arsenal to sign Argentinians and to get some winning mentality in there, but yeah, they don't do that. They like their Brazilians in there. I was on about the Champions League. Yeah, the Champions League. Obviously, with the World Cup, it was 48. It could be 64 at some point. I've heard some things about Zolis, seen some clips, and obviously he played against Arsenal last season. He's a decent player, but we need more, to be quite honest with you. If Konsa goes to Arsenal at 4.5, yeah, he'll break the game, as I read out earlier. A fan of Palestra, feels like he's going to be the Frimpong under Alonso system, says Weiseng. Only time will tell, but a lot of new names and faces to the Premier League, which will be exciting to see. But yeah, obviously Adrip also asking me on my thoughts on Palestra. To be honest, I haven't seen too much on him, so I need to do more research on him as a player. But I think with Chelsea, I've got reservations on quite a lot of the assets. Obviously, Lacroix is being linked, as people have mentioned, and Hato's 4.5. He could be a regular start in that team. But 5.5 seems a bit steep for a Chelsea option right now until I see that big improvement defensively. And yeah, under Xabi Alonso, I think Chelsea will be better. Obviously, they were fairly decent under Maresca, nothing spectacular, but until December, Chelsea always looked like the second or third best team in the league. Then they fall off a cliff. I don't think that'll be the case this time round, but yeah, I need to see some good signs in pre-season before investing 5.5 in Palestra. Right now, I prefer spending that on Mosquera, maybe a bit more on Van Dijk or a Man City option like Mark Gay. No, still was not first choice. It's Verbruggen. I've just got him as a backup 4 million option, to be honest. Welcome, Beardy. Always good to see you. That said, I was studying for over 10 years, says Twisted Parky. No real time to focus on footy that much. Wish I had played fantasy football for longer. My 5th year used to sort of play the paper one, but this format launched in 2003. Yeah, you're old school. Usually I am, but not when it comes to FPL. I'm quite new to the scene. I started around 2017 with Sky Fantasy Football. It's that third, fourth place playoff, so annoyed. My logic was Gusto and Hernandez poor, so Rashford and Saka great options, but I got Eze over Saka because of minutes. Yeah, I got Rashford, and he got subbed off for half-time. Not even sure why that was the case. I didn't care whatsoever about that third place game. The only thing I liked about it is that Saka scored a hat-trick. But yeah. By the way, one good idea for the third place playoff, which they're never going to do, is having the third place winner qualify for the next World Cup. The same goes for the World Cup winners and the second place team. So there's even more merit to reaching a World Cup final, to winning it, and also to finishing third. So it actually gives stakes to that game. But yeah, that's another story for another time, probably. Yeah, I'm well aware that he's a new fullback and wingback for Chelsea, but I just don't know enough about the player. So with more research, I can give more concrete answers to questions like that. Have you got a list of all the major price and position changes? Prices, no. With the positional changes, yes. There was an article on it on the FPL website, and I read it out earlier today. So that's something I have already spoken about So Lewis Skelly was a defender last season. He's now a midfielder. Bogard was a defender, now a midfielder. Krupi from a 4.5 million forward to a 6.5 million midfielder. Lewis Potter has been reclassified, and it's a bit of a negative one. He used to be a defender, now he's a midfielder. Beeper, though, could be one to look at. He was a midfielder previously, and now he's a 5 million defender. Jorginho Rota is a 5.5 million forward. Previously, he was a midfielder in FPL. Then you have Rio Cardines, he's a defender for Crystal Palace. Also, Patrick Dorgu is a midfielder in FPL. Eric Moreira for Nottingham Forest is a defender. Marmoush is a forward. Previously, he was a midfielder. And Sessegnon keeps switching. So 2 years ago, he was a defender, then moved to a midfielder last season, and now he's back to being a defender. Okay, so I'll answer a few more questions and then wrap things up because I'm going to have something to eat and chill a little bit. What the fuck is this? I need to get this crap away. So if you haven't done so already, by the way, drop a like on this stream, subscribe to the channel. It'd be massively appreciated. And let's try to get this stream to over 100 likes. I've answered a lot of questions today. But yeah, you know the drill by now. There's Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM. And there's also the Discord server, the FPL League. And that's something else I want to mention, actually, before I end things here. So, the new league code is 8CPXGO. And what I'm going to do is actually edit the description very quickly and have that live for you. So, it's going to be in the description of every single FPL podcast this season. And you'll also see the code, which you can copy into the FPL app. So that should be it. I think I changed the FPL Challenge League. We don't have that one yet. But once that's confirmed, I will be changing it. So yeah, that's already done. I'm going to add a link as well to the live chat. Hopefully this works. Okay, well, yeah, that should work. I couldn't really give you an answer to this one easy, but there's going to be plenty more transfer activity. The bulk of it should be done in the next month, but there will be some afterwards as well. But yeah, there's going to be dozens more. I can't give you an exact figure. I'm first place right now, going to enjoy it. Same here, and there's nothing to worry about in terms of deadlines or choices. We can just tinker to our heart's content. I'm 30k, never drafted, first team this quick, but I started leaving it later and later, and poor starts resulted. Yeah, I'm usually quite quick. I was doing something in the middle of FPL being launched, so I would have been, yeah, probably refreshing a little bit more. I didn't expect it to drop that early, but maybe I should have. Leeds United now in talks to sign James Trafford. Yes, and Newcastle were also interested. They wanted him last season. But, yeah, it looks like he's quite keen on joining Leeds United, so that's a very likely transfer. They're also looking at Julian Brandt. I didn't hear about that one. Obviously, Adeyemi joined Barcelona. That was confirmed today. I can't tell you who's the best differential right now, and there are still more names and players that I need to go through. But yeah, if we go back to the transfer section once again, I'll try to give you a few names in each position, but I don't think it's going to be clear-cut or necessarily something that is set in stone. So for goalkeepers, differentials, I think I'm not going to say Kelleher because there's quite a difficult period between game week 5 to 7 where they face Chelsea, Aston Villa and Liverpool. And I don't trust Brentford that much defensively. You know, wait. Yeah, also thinking about fixtures, Robin Rose. I like the first two, but there's Arsenal and Man City back-to-back. I'd probably say Robin Rose, though. The first 9 game weeks in particular, there are some pretty solid fixtures for the most part. So, yeah, Robin Rose is my differential goalkeeper. For defenders, I think Van Heck might be an interesting one. $4 million defender, maybe Thomas. Obviously, quite a lot of prop from the community today, and definitely one to look at. Harry Maguire, also pretty decent. And I do like the Kuiper for Brighton at 4.5 million. Just the attacking potential, but the minutes won't be particularly secure. So those are some options for you there. People might even point towards Milenkovic and stuff like that. But yeah, Palestra for Chelsea. Want to monitor, but I'm not going to say he's the best differential defender just yet. For midfielders, I'm going to go for... yeah, Saka, Palmer. They're not massive differentials, but most people in the community won't have them. So their ownership is around 12 to 11%, so that's pretty decent. I think that could be quite promising. Manzambi would pique my interest, but there are some question marks about Aston Villa. I like Garner from Everton. So those are a few names there for you. I think Stack is also quite underrated. For forwards, we are not sport for choice, but Igor Jesus would be one of those differentials. Solanke. I think those would be the main ones for me. Like pure differentials. Yeah, the rest wouldn't really be that. So there you go. A few options in each position. Hopefully you like that. Do you think this World Cup is the worst you ever watched? No. I said this before the final, and I'm going to maintain the same opinion afterwards. This is better than the 2018 World Cup, but yeah, I definitely prefer Qatar now, that's for sure. And the quality of football was better, irrespective of what people think or say. I think a lot of the players were playing at their peak levels in the 2022 World Cup. The good thing about this one is the star power. So obviously Vinicius did well in the group stages. You had Haaland, Mbappe, Kane, Messi, Golden Boot race. That was very interesting. You had Elise getting a lot of assists, Messi in the mix as well, Odegaard. Yeah, this was a pretty good World Cup, but obviously things off the field and stuff like that. Yeah, there's always going to be controversy, but it's not the worst World Cup I've seen, nor is it the best. Sky Fantasy was so bad, says Twisted Parky. It was interesting. Kroupier's a mid now. Yes, that's also interesting. Dorgu move to midfield makes him a total avoid all season. Agreed. I think Dorgu was always a little bit of a promising asset last season as a defender, but now it's not really the case. You got stealed because he came third in the World Cup, just because he's 4 million, to be honest. Every Brighton player, minutes risk, don't bother. That is true. Welbeck is not going to be part of my plans necessarily. Thorson Mitoma, he was actually involved in a car accident fairly recently. But yeah, Mitoma, what can I say about him? I mean, probably I'd echo Twisted Parky's thoughts. He's a Brighton fan. I'm not a big fan of most Brighton options in general. I mean, the Kuiper just because of the price. Mitoma is 6 million, which is interesting, and we all know what he can do. But he has gotten a lot of injuries over the past couple of, well, months and years now. And I just think at 6 to 6.5, there are better options elsewhere. Hi, Dylan. Who are the top 3 defenders below 5.5 right now? Oh, good question. I think Jeremy Jackett would enter that conversation. So that's not too bad. If I just now go to the transfer section here as well. I think one of Maguire or Shaw, just because of United's opening fixtures, and maybe Van Heck. I'd probably put his name into the mix. Yeah, that'd be an interesting one. I got 77 points in the final. I'll be honest, I don't know how many points I got in the final. I couldn't be asked. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I got a green arrow, and I did as well as I could, basically, considering the circumstances. But yeah, fair play on that one. We can figure out World Cup Fantasy now and look ahead to FPL, which has launched today. UCL Fantasy will also be on the horizon over the next couple of weeks, and there will be some content towards the end of August from my side, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. If you haven't done so already, drop a like on the stream, subscribe to my channel, and also hit the notification bell so you're always up to date on my content, not just for FPL, but also UCL Fantasy, which will be live very soon. And a big up to everyone for tuning in. Maybe I'll answer a few more questions. We'll reach the 2-hour mark and then call it a day. But it's good to see people still here. That's always massively appreciated. But just to kind of give you a rough look at my current draft, it's very rough, and I'll be doing some separate videos talking about some of my picks. I've currently got Raya and Steele as my goalkeepers, Shaw, Van Dijk and Mitchell, Wilson, Garner, Rodgers, Bruno Fernandes and Gibbs White, Haaland and Igor Jesus. Yeah, already having those two from Forest is not particularly great. So yeah, I'll probably just get rid of Jesus then and go for a different forward. That could be Brobby or Calvert-Lewin. There's a case for Solanke, Welbeck, and all these different options, Ivanilson. But if I'm being honest, I think what I'd probably do in this situation is go for Brobby for the first two fixtures. Something a little bit different. But yeah, definitely plenty of time to go back to the drawing board. The other alternative is Joao Pedro and then Van Dijk to Jacket to have a bit more of a differential. But at the same time, I'm going for a very expensive, a very template option up front in Joao Pedro. Very, very template. So that's something else I could do. So there you go. As you can see, tinkering constantly. The prices are definitely making us think, which is a good thing, but I still think some of them are completely overpriced. Is Cherki a good pick? Decent, but I think it's quite similar level to Gibbs White, Rodgers, and the others at 7.5 to 8 million. Well, Gvardiol was actually linked with a move away for most of the summer, and that's still a possibility. I think he'll stay at Man City, but I'm not sure if he'll start regularly enough to sort of justify inclusion in our squads. But he is 5.5, which obviously would make him very, very promising, in fact. ELFC says, I just can't look past Isak. That's fair enough. I think the big question mark about him is the fitness. Can he play enough games there and not get all these injury problems that he usually does? Only time will tell. Twisted Parky says, I'm wondering if Kozier, Dewberry and Watson get a chance. We have bought two new wingers, but Matoma and Minter won't always play, and we have Europe. Exactly that. And I think Hurst is a very difficult manager to predict at times. Good to see you, Lewis. I'll see you very soon. Josh 10 says, I was thinking of doing bench boost and wildcard, but as you said, I think I'm someone who books transfers, and my aim is not to do that this year. I might just do bench boost, no wildcard. Yeah, with the wildcard, I think there is a case to save it for later, even compared to last season. And I think Game Week 15 could be a decent sort of week. But there isn't a clear standout based on what I've seen on fixture swings. But that's something I'll also delve into. And also pre-season, more information and stats and insight into these squads and players. That's where I'll start delving into a chip strategy and refining that. Maybe making that into a separate video. And also incorporating that into my drafts and my final team selection as we approach the Game Week 1 deadline on the 21st of August. Not bad, but looks like it needs tinkering. Exactly. And hopefully the first draft I build for that dedicated video will be even better than this one. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you very soon for more FPL content. It's very likely that the next FPL stream will be the deadline for Game Week 1 in just under a month's time, but there should be plenty of content with videos. And I'll try to do a live stream if possible a little bit earlier than that. And don't forget UCL Fantasy. I'll be doing some drafts for that one. Also a team selection and deadline streams for every single match day, all 17 of them after covering the World Cup just now. Take care, enjoy the football, but obviously right now we've got a bit of a break from that, so have fun with the summer, no matter where you are in the world, what season it is. I hope you have a great campaign and enjoy FPL to the fullest. And if you haven't played UCL Fantasy, I'd highly recommend you do that. It's a very fun game and very different to FPL, but I'll see you very soon for the upcoming piece of content, I should say. And it's always a pleasure seeing so many faces in these streams, and hopefully more to come in the future.